Have you ever noticed how easy it is to give yourself away? A stranger cuts in front of you and you swallow the anger. A friend cancels on you again and you pretend it doesn't matter. Someone steals credit for your work and you stay silent. You tell yourself it's kindness, patience, maturity. But deep down, you know what it really is. You're teaching the world that you can be stepped on without consequence. I've seen this in myself, and I've seen it in others. The quiet ache of being liked, but never respected. Approval feels sweet in the moment, but it rots you from the inside. Because the harder you chase it, the more invisible you become. Respect, on the other hand, is carved out of steel. It doesn't come from pleasing. It comes from boundaries, from the quiet refusal to kneel. So ask yourself, are you ready to stop living as someone's afterthought? Are you ready to carry yourself in a way that demands respect without begging for it? Stay with me, because what comes next may change the way you walk through every room. As we step into the first chapter, imagine this. You walk into a room filled with laughter and chatter. You smile, nod, and offer your best face, careful not to disturb anyone. Yet beneath the surface, something stirs, a quiet ache whispering that no one truly sees you. Now, carry that feeling across the years. Each time a stranger cut in line and you stayed silent. Each time a friend cancelled on you and you shrugged as though your time meant nothing. Each time someone claimed your effort as theirs, and you let it pass. You told yourself it was patience, kindness, or maturity. But what if it was something else entirely? What if you were training the world to step on you without consequence? Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Yet so often, we live as though the opposite were true. We hand our strength to others, hoping their nods and smiles will give it back as respect. But respect is never returned that way. Respect is not born from approval, it is born from consequence. Think about the last person you met who was desperate to be liked. Did you respect them? Or did you sense, even faintly, that they would do anything to be accepted? And because of that, they were predictable. Desperation carries its own stench, and people smell it long before words are spoken. When being liked is your goal, your path is already mapped. Everyone knows you will smile even when insulted. Everyone knows you will agree even when they are wrong. Everyone knows you will keep showing up even when they waste your time. And once you become predictable, you become disposable. I once had a teacher who embodied the opposite. She never raised her voice. She never chased after affection. Yet the room shifted the moment she entered. She carried a quiet gravity. If you crossed her, consequences followed, not dramatic, but undeniable. Because of that, no one dared treat her lightly. Now compare that to the agreeable classmate who smiled at everything. He was liked, yes, but respected, never. He was the one assigned the grunt work. He was the one mocked with easy jokes. Presence without boundaries turned him into a target. Machiavelli, often misunderstood, wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." He was not praising cruelty. He was describing the reality of respect. Fear, in this sense, is not terror. It is the knowledge that crossing you has a cost. Without that cost, you are not respected. You are merely used. Look closely at those who command your deepest respect. Perhaps it was a strict mentor who demanded your best, or a friend who spoke the hard truth instead of flattering you. None of them begged for approval. None of them twisted themselves to win favor. They stood firmly within their own ground, and that firmness was the source of their authority. Meanwhile, those who chased approval are forgotten, overlooked, perhaps even pitied, because when you make yourself endlessly available, you become special to no one. That is the cruel paradox. The more you try to be liked, the less people actually like you. Not because kindness is wrong, but because need is repulsive. People are drawn to those who do not need them. What is scarce is valued. What comes too easily is dismissed. Seneca warned, "He who seeks approval is a slave to all he meets." And this slavery does not appear in chains. It appears in smiles given too freely, in silences that swallow truth, in endless patience that erodes dignity. It looks like courtesy, but it is fear. Fear of rejection, fear of standing alone. Yet only the one who dares to stand alone will ever stand tall. Deep down, even those who benefit from your eagerness do not respect you. They may flatter you to your face. They may smile in your presence. But in their private thoughts, they know the truth. They know you will bend. They know you will yield. They know you will trade your dignity for scraps of attention. This is the hidden weakness of being liked. It is the trap that keeps millions powerless, clinging to the illusion that niceness will earn them love and respect. But niceness without consequence is weakness in disguise. Respect is not handed out like charity. It is commanded by presence, by boundaries, by consequence. And you cannot command anything when you kneel for approval. So ask yourself this: when you are gone, will you be remembered as the one who was liked by all but respected by none? Or will you be remembered as the one who entered a room without asking for permission to exist, and by that very act commanded respect? This is where the journey begins, by choosing strength over approval, consequence over desperation, and the firmness of your own ground over the shifting sand of people's opinions. From here, the path sharpens. The question is not whether you can be liked. The question is whether you dare to be respected. Moving into the second chapter, imagine a house with doors that never lock. People wander in and out as they please, leaving their marks, scattering their dust, never fearing consequence. That is what happens when you live without boundaries. When you shrug at every slight and excuse every insult, you are telling the world that entry into your life costs nothing, and when the cost is nothing, people treat you as nothing. Respect rests on one principle: consequence. When people know that crossing you will cost them something, they think twice. When they know there is no cost, they cross you again and again. It is not complicated. It is the way of all things. The fire that burns will not be touched. The edge of the blade that cuts will not be grabbed. But the one who never resists, never enforces, is treated like earth to be trampled. This is where many are deceived. They confuse admiration with respect. They think being impressive, successful, or talented will shield them. But admiration is fragile. It can turn into envy. It can fade when the novelty passes. Respect is different. Respect comes when you refuse to tolerate what dishonors you. It comes when your boundaries are not decoration, but law. I once saw a man who was endlessly kind, endlessly patient. He smiled when dismissed. He laughed when mocked. He offered help to those who disrespected him. People praised him behind his back for being so nice, yet they never treated him with gravity. They knew they could wound him, and he would still return, open-handed. His niceness became his downfall. He was safe to ignore, safe to disrespect, safe to use. And then I saw the opposite. A woman who did not shout, did not threaten, but whose presence carried weight. The moment someone crossed her line, they lost something: her trust, her time, her attention. She did not explain her choice. She simply acted. People adjusted. They measured their words in her company. They handled her with care. She was not liked by everyone, but she was respected by all. Seneca once warned, "He who does not prevent a wrong when he can, commands it to be done." Silence in the face of wrong is not patience, it is permission. Each time you let someone cross you without consequence, you invite them to do it again. And they will, because you have taught them that disrespect is free. But when you flip the script, everything shifts. When you make it clear that your time, your energy, your presence have value, people take notice. When they learn that disrespect closes doors, that it costs them your attention, that it costs them your company, suddenly you matter. Suddenly your words carry weight. Suddenly you are no longer safe to harm. Machiavelli observed, "Men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that he who deceives will always find someone who allows himself to be deceived." People treat you according to what you allow. No better, no worse. If you make yourself the easy mark, they will treat you as such. If you make yourself costly to harm, they will think before they strike. Here is the hidden strength of respect. It reinforces itself. The more you enforce it, the more natural it becomes. The more you stand firm, the easier it becomes to remain firm. One act of consequence builds the next. And soon you rise into a spiral of dignity, carried not by shouting, not by force, but by the unshakable certainty that your worth cannot be bargained. But there is a razor's edge you must see. To seek to be liked is to hand control to others. They decide whether you receive what you crave. To demand respect is different. You hold the reins. Respect is not something they grant you. It is something you secure by refusing to accept less. Think of the figures you truly respect. Did they beg for recognition? Did they argue why they deserved it? Did they twist themselves into comfort just to be accepted? Never. They drew lines and lived by them. Their refusal to bow became their power. That is what separates the strong from the weak. The strong know respect is not negotiable. The weak believe it is earned by endless giving, but you cannot give away your strength and expect to keep respect. So let this truth strike deep. Respect does not come from being endlessly kind. It does not come from pleasing. It comes from keeping what is yours, your dignity, your ground, your consequence. Once you see this, you cannot unsee it. This is the dark power of respect. Dark not because it destroys, but because it shields. Like the shadow of a mountain that cools the valley below, respect shelters you from being used. And the moment you decide, once and for all, that your worth is not open for debate, you step into a power that no one can take. From here, the road sharpens again. For once respect is set, the next question rises. Who truly holds the control? Others over you, or you over yourself? Advancing to the third chapter, picture two men seated across a table. One speaks loudly, the other sits quietly, but only one is truly steering the moment. Every word, every pause, every gesture carries weight. Here is the truth most ignore. If you cannot tell who holds the control, it is not you. Think back to your own life, the times you bit your tongue just to keep the peace, the times you nodded along though your heart said no, the times you reshaped yourself so that others would not be displeased. Each of those moments was not an act of kindness, they were small surrenders. You thought you were avoiding conflict. In truth, you were handing over command of your own life. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." The man who seeks to be liked becomes a servant to those around him. Each false smile is another chain. Each silence that hides the truth is another shackle. Approval given too much turns into a prison. And the key is in the other person's hand, not yours. I once knew a man who lived this way. To the world, he was agreeable, dependable, always available. People loved him for his compliance. But when I looked closely, I saw the cracks. He shifted his opinions with the crowd. He bent his values at the slightest push. One evening he admitted, "I don't even know who I am anymore. That is not freedom. That is slavery with a pleasant face." Now imagine the opposite. Someone who no longer needs approval to stand firm. They walk into the same room and everything feels different. They speak when they choose, not when silence feels awkward. They decide by their own compass, not by the noise of expectation. They hold the terms of every interaction. This is not arrogance, it is ownership. It is the rare discipline of one who keeps command over themselves. Here's the shift that changes everything. When you no longer crave approval, others lose their weapon against you. They cannot guilt you into action. They cannot shame you into silence. They cannot press you into bending. They push the buttons and nothing happens. That is power, not over others. Power over yourself. Machiavelli once wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." The moment you stop performing for approval, you become unreadable. And unreadable means untouchable. They cannot map you. They cannot predict you. And what cannot be predicted cannot be controlled. So, what unfolds when you step free from this trap? First, clarity. Choices no longer clouded by the question, will they like me? Instead, you ask, is this true to me? That alone reshapes a life. Second, relationships. Some will wither away. Good. They lived only on the nourishment of your compliance. Let them die. What remains are the real bonds, born of mutual respect. Better one true ally than a crowd of masters. Third, your presence grows heavier, not louder, heavier. People sense that they cannot move you with tricks or flatteries. You are still, and stillness commands. You become the stone no one can push, the ground no one can shake. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." If your thoughts are bound to the hunger for approval, your happiness belongs to someone else. But when your thoughts stand on their own ground, unbent by the crowd, then your life is finally your own. So let this strike deeply. Every yes that betrayed your no, every silence that buried your truth, every smile that hid your pain, each was a moment you gave away the reins of your soul. It is time to take them back, not with noise, not with rage, but with the quiet discipline of one who knows their worth. From here, the road sharpens, because once you reclaim control, temptation appears, the sweet lure of validation calling you back into chains. And that is the trial we face in the next step. Entering the fourth chapter, imagine yourself standing on a stage. The lights are blinding, the crowd is roaring, hands clapping, voices rising with your name. For a moment your chest swells and your spirit soars. You feel invincible. Yet when the lights go dark and the crowd disappears, what lingers is not strength but emptiness. You crave the applause again. You need it. That is the chain of approval. Sweet in the moment, but bitter in its aftermath. Here's the raw truth. Approval is not harmless. It works like a drug. A word of praise, a smile, a hand on the shoulder, and you feel lifted. But like smoke in the air, it vanishes quickly, leaving you desperate for the next hit. And once others notice that desperation, they know exactly how to play you. They drip-feed compliments like breadcrumbs. They praise your hard work when they want you to stay late. They call you generous when they need your money. They flatter your patience when they want you to overlook their faults. With a few cheap words, they bend you to their will. Seneca once said, "He who seeks approval is a slave to all he meets." Slavery rarely appears with chains. More often it comes with polite smiles and subtle words. The cruelest part is not that people manipulate you. It is that you join in. You hunger for their validation, no matter how little it costs them to give. You beg for scraps of recognition, even as it costs you your freedom. I once had a friend who lived entirely for applause. Every thought he shared online was shaped to please the crowd. Every opinion bent to fit the moment. In public he looked admired, even adored. But in private he admitted, "I don't even know who I am anymore." That is what chasing approval steals. It does not only take your dignity, it strips away your identity until nothing remains but a collection of masks. Now look at those who are free from this need. They are consistent no matter where they stand. The same words in the marketplace, the same words in the home. They do not twist themselves to win favor. They do not fear disapproval more than dishonor. Their presence carries a weight that draws others in. Ironically, they are respected, even genuinely liked more than the people-pleasers ever will be. Authenticity is magnetic. Desperation repels. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them knows anything about the subject." The same applies to your life. Approval is cheap to give. It costs others nothing, a single phrase, a passing compliment, and they go on with their day. But for you to feel whole, you demand to hear it again and again. You become dependent on something that belongs entirely to others. That is not stability, that is ruin. And breaking free is never easy. Your own mind fights you. It whispers that without approval you will be cast out. It warns that you will be alone. It makes you feel guilt for valuing your own judgment above the crowd's. But this is where discipline, the heart of Stoicism, must take root. You must be willing to endure rejection. You must be strong enough to be disliked, even hated, if that is the cost of standing true. I remember the first time I refused to explain myself. Someone demanded a reason for my no. I gave none. I simply said no. The silence that followed felt like thunder. I braced myself for anger or loss. Instead, I found respect. Quiet, steady, undeniable respect. Because in that moment, I proved I could not be swayed by flattery, guilt, or pressure. In that moment, I was free. So here is the heart of it. You cannot serve two masters. Either you belong to the crowd, or you belong to yourself. Approval may feel safe, but it is a leash. Freedom may feel frightening, but it is the only ground worth standing on. To choose freedom is to walk tall, whole, and unbroken. The addiction to approval is perhaps the most dangerous of all. It feels comforting even as it enslaves. It disguises itself as belonging even as it erodes your soul. But once you break it, once you anchor your worth in yourself rather than in the applause of others, you become untouchable. No one can dangle praise to buy your obedience. No one can withhold affection to bend your will. This is the Stoic path, to be guided not by the voices of others, but by the compass within. Epictetus said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Let them misunderstand you. Let them call you cold. What matters is not their judgment. What matters is that you remain whole." So ask yourself now, Will you live begging for scraps of approval, or will you claim the power that was always yours? This is not about cruelty. It is about freedom. It is about stepping off the stage, taking off the mask, and standing firm in who you are without apology. And from here, the path sharpens again. For once you are free from craving approval, the next test begins, the art of commanding respect through your very presence, without a single word spoken. At this stage, let's step onto the ground of practice, where philosophy turns into steel and quiet presence begins to reshape how others see you. The lessons here are not lofty theories. They are tested principles, written not only in books, but in the scars of experience. The man who learns them stops being ignored and starts commanding attention without ever needing to demand it. Respect begins to follow him like a shadow. Rule 1. Speak less, act more. Have you ever noticed how the weak cannot bear silence? They fill every pause with words, explanations, and excuses. They justify themselves as if begging for permission to exist. But those who carry real power, they let silence do half the speaking. Their words are few, but their actions echo loudly. When disrespected, they do not lecture. They step away, and absence delivers the lesson. When a boundary is crossed, they do not defend its value, they enforce it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. A lion does not announce that it is dangerous. Its very being carries the warning." Rule 2. Never chase approval. This lesson may feel simple, but it cuts the deepest. Every instinct may urge you to explain, to clarify, to soften rejection. But the moment you chase, you kneel. And where there is kneeling, respect vanishes. Indifference, though, has gravity. When you no longer need someone's nod, they lean toward you, wondering why you stand so steady. That curiosity ripens into respect. I once saw a man deliberately ignored at a gathering. Instead of scrambling for attention, he turned calmly to another, laughed, and carried on. Minutes later, the very one who dismissed him came back, unsettled by his strength. The man who does not chase is the man who compels. Rule 3. Stay cold and calm under attack. This is the trial most fail. An insult flies, a provocation is thrown, and the ordinary man bleeds anger, proving he is easy to move. But the one who remains still, who answers with a faint smile or silence, unsettles the entire room. I remember watching a man mocked openly in a council. He leaned back, folded his hands, and did nothing. The attacker grew smaller with every second. Authority belonged to the one who refused to be moved. This is the heart of Stoicism, not conquering others, but conquering yourself. Rule 4. Stay unpredictable. Predictability is the leash of the weak. If others can map your reactions, they can trap you easily. The antidote is variety. Sometimes be generous, sometimes be ruthless, sometimes warm, sometimes distant. Help when it matters, refuse when it must. To be unreadable is to be unshakable. Machiavelli once wrote, "Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose, it is far safer to be feared than loved. But wisdom lies in using both masks with care." Be the fox to outwit deception. Be the lion to crush defiance. In unpredictability, you become untouchable. Rule 5. Enforce boundaries swiftly and silently. Most people ruin their strength here. They warn, they plead, they grant second and third chances until their lines blur into nothing. But the man who commands respect acts differently. His response is immediate, measured, and final. No speeches, no apologies, no drawn-out explanations, just consequence. A door quietly closed. An invitation withdrawn. A presence withheld. Silence carries more weight than anger. It teaches the room that his boundaries are not suggestions. They are laws of his being. Machiavelli compared the lion and the fox. The lion cannot defend against traps. The fox cannot face the wolves. To survive, to stand, to command respect, you must be both. Cunning enough to see through deception, strong enough to confront force. Strategy and strength balanced in one soul. So, let this sink deep. Respect does not come to the loudest voice, nor to the endlessly giving, nor to the one desperate to be liked. It belongs to the one who speaks little, bends rarely, needs little, and enforces swiftly. These rules are not tricks. They are a discipline, a way of carrying yourself in a world that bends too easily, and the one who lives them becomes immovable. From here, the journey sharpens again. For beyond rules lies a subtler art, the use of scarcity and distance, the quiet multipliers that turn respect into lasting influence. Advancing to the 6th chapter, picture a faucet dripping endlessly in the corner of a silent room. At first, you notice every sound, but soon the drops fade into background noise, no longer worth your attention. That is what happens when you make yourself endlessly available. Your presence loses its weight, not because you changed, but because you became too common. Now think about this. How many times have you said yes when your heart whispered no? How many times have you rushed to answer every message, attend every meeting, carry every burden, believing this would make you indispensable? And yet, the more you gave, the less it seemed to matter. This is the trap most never see. They confuse constant presence with value. They confuse endless giving with love. But what is common is never cherished. What is abundant is rarely honored. The Stoics knew the secret. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Value yourself above all else, for without this, you cannot truly value another." Scarcity creates value, always has, always will. Just as gold would be meaningless if it were scattered like sand, your time, your attention, your forgiveness must be rare enough to carry weight. When people sense they can cross you without cost, they stop respecting you. But when your presence is selective, when your attention has conditions, they tread more carefully. I once knew a woman who was everywhere, every event, every call, every favor asked, she gave. For years, she thought this loyalty made her irreplaceable. Instead, she became invisible, used but not valued. Then, exhausted, she began saying no. At first, people resisted, some left in anger, but those who remained began to treat her differently. They listened more. They weighed their requests. They cherished her time. By becoming scarce, she became precious. Machiavelli observed, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel. The less you reveal, the more they wonder." Distance is not coldness, it is clarity. When you are not always present, curiosity grows, and curiosity is magnetic. Here's the practical edge. Instead of answering every message at once, reply when it suits you. Instead of saying yes to every invitation, choose the ones aligned with your values. Instead of giving to everyone, give to those who honor your effort. Your time is treasure, and treasure loses worth when scattered carelessly. Scarcity feeds itself. The less you give, the more others value it. The more they value it, the more respectfully they treat you. The more respect you receive, the freer you become to choose. It is an upward spiral of influence, but it demands courage. the courage to lose those who only clung to you because you were easy to reach. Let them go. They were never true companions. The ones who remain, the ones who respect your space, are the ones worth keeping. Distance also clears the mind. When you're not constantly reacting to others, you finally hear yourself. When you're not tangled in every demand, you see your own path more clearly. Epictetus once said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Let them misinterpret your silence. Let them call your distance cold. Their opinion is not your burden. Clarity is. Look at the powerful in any room. They seem slightly detached, not because they do not care, but because they do not care too much. They guard their time, their attention, their energy, and that restraint becomes their strength. So what happens when you live this truth? You stop being background noise. You stop being the noise in the corner, forgotten by those around you. You become the diamond in the room, the rare presence that commands attention. Scarcity does not diminish you. It defines you. Distance does not weaken you. It sharpens you. And from here, the path leads to the final transformation, learning to carry respect not as a tactic, but as a way of life. When you stop chasing approval and begin to walk with respect, everything shifts. The change is not small. It touches every part of your life. Some relationships will fall away because they cannot survive the new you. Others will deepen, built on truth instead of pretense. The people who stay will recognize the real you, not the mask you once wore to keep peace. Confidence begins to rise in a way that no compliment could ever give. This is not the fragile confidence that depends on another person's smile. It is the certainty that your worth is not up for debate. You stop second-guessing your choices. You stop wondering if others agree. You stand firm in the ground you have chosen. Opportunities appear because people trust your presence. They seek your voice, not for flattery, but for truth. They offer you positions and possibilities because they know you will not settle for scraps. And the weight of stress begins to fall away. Life grows lighter when you no longer carry the burden of managing other people's moods. You gain the space to focus on what truly matters. The greatest gift is freedom. Freedom from the hunger to be liked. Freedom from the masks. Freedom to be yourself without apology. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, it is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. Respect flows not from what others call you, but from how you live, how you hold yourself, how you refuse to surrender what is yours. This journey will not be instant. You will be tempted to slip back into old habits. You will wonder if you are too strict when you enforce your standards. You may feel guilty when others resist your boundaries. Stay steady. On the other side of that discomfort is a version of you who commands respect without asking for it. Stronger, clearer, untouchable. The world is crowded with those who long to be liked. Yet it is starving for those who stand firm, who carry themselves with quiet dignity, who make it known that respect is non-negotiable. You are here, which means you are ready to join the few. If this message speaks to you, take a moment to subscribe so you can continue walking this path with us. Share this with someone who needs the reminder. And in the comments, write "Respect first." Remember this. You do not need approval to live with strength. You only need the courage to stand on your own ground. Begin today. The next step in your journey is waiting.